Meta's new patent shows how technology could be used to make lip syncing and facial animation in video games and VR apps more realistic. By giving NPCs and player avatars more realistic facial movements, games and experiences, including VR games, can become more realistic, interesting, and immersive. Even though video game graphics have gotten better over the years, allowing for nearly photorealistic characters to be made in recent years, it has always been hard for developers to make characters talk and act in a realistic way. Kicking us off, Meta patent could lead to better lip sync in video games and VR applications. Gamers are used to seeing and reading other people's faces, so even the best facial animation on a video game character can easily cross into the uncanny valley, making the character look off or even creepy. Meta's patent could let developers make realistic lip syncing and facial expressions on the fly, which would save them time and make the game more immersive for players. The patent describes different ways to turn a user's speech into realistic lip syncing and facial animation. This gives developers a lot of options for how to use the system. In the patent, there is a method that uses a set of audio and video recordings of multiple people reading 50 phonetically balanced sentences, with the system keeping track of their facial expressions as they read. By keeping track of how people's faces and mouths move as they read each sentence, the system can use these movements to animate a character in a way that looks and moves like a real person. This includes small movements like blinking and raising an eyebrow. VR headsets like the Meta Quest Pro and Pico Neo 4 Pro, which are coming out soon, already have built-in face and eye tracking. Fans of VR games and social experiences might find one of the other ideas in the patent the most interesting. The patent describes how the same thing could be done with cameras built into a VR headset to do the same thing. This feature could let VR users make avatars that have the same facial expressions as them. This would make the multiplayer games and social VR experiences like VR chat more realistic and immersive. From Valve's Source Engine, which used an animation system that modeled facial movements for each phoneme, the individual sounds that make up words, to Team Bondi's use of 32 high-definition cameras and motion scan technology to capture L.A. Noire's actors' performances, making realistic faces for games has always seemed just out of reach. Meta's patent could mean a big technological step forward in this quest, and it could help usher in a new era of high-quality facial animation in games and VR experiences that looks more like real life. Next up, let's talk about VR Chat's anti-cheat controversy and response explained. VRChat Inc. has announced that Easy Anti-Cheat will be added to VRChat as part of a new update to make it safer against malicious users. This decision has left many players disappointed and frustrated. Even though it's not the first game to use EAC, players have been taking to social media to express their displeasure with the decision. They say that these changes will destroy the community of mods that has grown up in and around VRChat. Concerns have also been raised about mods that make virtual reality easier for people with disabilities to use, since the EAC would also go after these mods. In response to the backlash, which included VRChat being review bombed on stream, VRChat Inc. put out a public statement defending its decision to implement EAC and assuring its users that accessibility features will be built into future updates. Even so, players are still unhappy with the decision, and not just because it makes the game harder to get to. For example, current modders say they feel like they are being targeted by an unfair policy and losing their creative work, while future users are discouraged from playing the game because there are other options. VRChat's easy anti-cheat reasoning. At first glance, VRChat Inc.'s decision to put in place a way to better moderate the content it hosts seems like a good one. Developers are usually careful about what kind of services they let in, whether it's to protect the quality or performance of games or the safety of users. For example, when Miiverse was shut down, Nintendo's official reason was that there were other social media services that did the same thing better. However, many fans think that Nintendo was having trouble moderating online content made by fans, especially content that wasn't appropriate for children. Also, VRChat Inc.'s decision isn't strange because it mentions many other games, like Apex Legends and Fortnite, that use EACs as an important part of their online services. Importantly though, putting in place an EAC is a one-size-fits-all solution to a complicated problem, since the EAC will ban all VRChat mods and won't tell the difference between ones that are harmful and ones that make things easier to use. To make things even more complicated, it looks like VRChat Inc.'s response has been to double down and only think about the effects of its decision after the public spoke spoke out against it, VRChat Inc.'s response, and future plans. The main problem with this one-size-fits-all approach to solving problems is that it doesn't take into account the needs of users with different abilities and limits their freedom to be creative. Players will always look for ways to improve the way they play their favorite games. For example, there are already many games like Minecraft and Grand Theft Auto 5 that have player-hosted servers for modded versions. This suggests that VRChat shouldn't be any different. Also, most games have a lot of ways to play, but VRChat is a unique game that depends a lot on the player's creativity to have fun. After the backlash, VRChat Inc. released a new statement with careful wording. This has led some players to wonder how committed the developers are to listening to the VRChat community. Some people wonder why accessibility was never thought of in the first place, and why, when mods were the only way to fix these problems, an EAC was made before accessibility was fixed completely. Even so, players are still hopeful that VRChat Inc. will listen to fan feedback and add accessibility features. However, it is unclear when these features will be added because they've only been called a priority. Next up, Nintendo should take another shot at VR. In the game industry, VR has become a pretty interesting beast. Even though it hasn't taken over gaming yet, it has grown and become stable enough to be a key part of making games. Several companies have put money into making a steady line of VR headsets, and some very memorable VR games, like Half-Life Alyx, have come out in the last few years. VR is stable and getting better all the time, so it seems inevitable that big gaming companies like Nintendo will start making VR games. Nintendo isn't yet a big name in VR gaming, but with its power and money, it could make a difference in this market. Because of its well-known franchises, Nintendo seems like it could have a very profitable future in VR. Nintendo makes a lot of different kinds of games, but many of them, like Animal Crossing and The Legend of Zelda, seem like they could make really interesting VR games. Technically, Nintendo has tried its hand at VR with one Nintendo Labo kit, which showed how it could make creative VR entertainment. However, if it wants a piece of the VR pie in the long run, Nintendo needs to invest in a line of proper headsets and controllers. Technically, Nintendo did try virtual reality with Nintendo Labo a few years ago, and some parts of it were pretty cool. With one of the Nintendo Labo's cardboard kits, you could make a Switch case that you could hold up to your face. Switch users could play different VR games with the Labo set because it could be changed into different controllers. Unfortunately, Nintendo Labo has closed down because Switch users never really took to it. It's clear that if Nintendo wants to get into VR, it won't be able to do so with a cardboard headset. Instead, it will have to make a more traditional headset. Finally, Nintendo's potential VR games. A lot of Nintendo games have good, simple ideas that work well for an engaging VR game that can be enjoyed by a wide range of people. For example, Animal Crossing seems like the perfect game for VR. Fans already like to walk around their towns and talk to the villagers. Being able to decorate and talk to other people in first person would make the Animal Crossing experience even better. Beat Saber, a popular game by VRgames, has also shown that rhythm games work well in VR. If Nintendo puts money into making VR headsets, it could make Rhythm Heaven into a VR franchise like Beat Saber did. Nintendo also has a lot of action-packed games that seem perfect for VR. VR swordplay has already been done in games like Vader Immortal, so a spin-off of The Legend of Zelda could let players look through Link's eyes, explore new dungeons, and kill monsters from a first-person view. Mario Kart also seems like it would work well as a VR game. Racing on famous courses and throwing items at other players in first-person online multiplayer sounds like a lot of fun. With games from these and other franchises, an official Nintendo VR headset could have a good set of games. Unfortunately, guys, that is all the time we had for today. Make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Till next time, cheers!